fiction's short story, which is like my favorite genre, so it works out. So it sort of involves like, do you know what Gothic fiction is?
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything cool, like like Frankenstein is like one of my top 5 favorite books. Everything Edgar Allan Poe wrote effectively, Kafka, stuff like that. It's sort of like, was that? I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure. But yeah, it involves sort of like, usually it's set sort of at an anonymous time where it's like it could be any time. And it's sort of set in a place that it's like, the setting doesn't really matter, although there's usually a lot of snow involved and lots of mountains involved. And so the reason I chose this specific genre is to write sort of, I really like a short story. It's sort of more, it doesn't really center around the hero, but it's about the hero's, it's about events that the hero, or the actions the hero takes to, it's more about like the virtues of the hero expressed through these actions. So the reason I chose this genre is because in all of these, within this genre, you can easily relate to the main character. Like for Frankenstein, you could easily relate to him, even though it was like you could see all of his flaws very clearly. But because more or less you know exactly what the character knows, you understand his drive and passion, and you can also relate to him because you can see what you would do in his shoes, and that's the same place that sort of I have with this story. And I guess I'll just read the first part. It's sort of like a mystery type thing, so I'll go for it. Alright, here goes. They were building something. No one knew what it was exactly, but everyone had their suspicions. The men at the dock said they had seen glimpses of what seemed to be large pieces of metal, but then there were also rumors of blocks of stone being moved in on carts. People often talked in hushed voices of a machine being built that could stop time or teleport objects or persons. Whatever it was, there was much doubt and suspicion from the inquisitive people of the town, involving whatever it was that they were indeed constructing within the walls of their secluded fortress. The people who worked on the machine seldom, if ever, left the shelter of the high, opaque, and foreboding walls. Some people of the town would try to catch glimpses of what was going on inside the citadel when the massive iron gates would swing open and shut, leaving just enough time to take the necessary materials enclosed in anonymous crates inside. The glimpses are not incredibly informational, and they only seemed to make the mystery more ominous. They only seemed to make the mystery more ominous. They involved images of men with blank faces, fatigued figures, and nondescript clothes hurriedly going about their various tasks. Never were there sights of the thing itself, for it was not being constructed within the visibility of the entrance. The fortress itself comprised about a square mile in area, and the walls were 40 to 50 meters high, with smooth black granite. This made a stark and blunt contrast with the snow that had recently fallen, which made an appearance almost 2/3 of the year this far north. On each of the 4 corners there was a bastion with black windows facing outwards. There were also 2 entrances. One was facing the town, and one was in the form of 2 large opening doors.
Wait, pause for a second.
Yes.
So this is a Gothic novel, right?
No,
It's a short story, yeah.
Wait, let's set the tone. Hold on.
Oh dear.
I don't have candles. I'm sorry. Your screen's lit, right? How's that?
Yes.
I love it.
Just slow down just a hair and
Okay.
accentuate it. Read it like Vincent Price or something.
Alright.
Okay, and action.
Alright, I'll start. Okay, the fortress itself, about a square mile in area, and the walls. The fortress itself comprised about a square mile in area, and the walls were 40 to 50 meters high, made with smooth black granite. This made a stark and blunt contrast with the snow that had recently fallen, which made an appearance almost 2/3 of the year this far north. On each of the 4 corners there was a bastion with large black windows facing outwards. There were also 2 entrances. One was facing the town and was in the form of 2 large opening doors, almost the height of the walls themselves. The other could only be seen from the sea. A gate that came down into the water from above, made out of cast iron, guarded this entrance, which was large enough to let even the tallest ships through. Because of this, the whole operation was shrouded in the unknown. Many people may have pretended to know exactly what was going on within the walls, but everyone knew that no one knew. There were also curious instances of people disappearing from time to time, for no apparent reason. At first when it started, there was suspicion and even unrest among the people, but now it was just something to be expected and never talked about. For the people of the town, they could have just left. It made no difference. Eventually, most people stopped asking questions. The disappearances in the fortress itself became a shadow of the town. Some, however, continued to wonder. One man in particular was especially anxious about the situation. He moved into town about 6 months ago and was alarmed by the daunting granite walls and the monolithic bastions. The questions he asked were rarely answered, not necessarily because the people were hesitant to speak of the matter, but because usually the answer wasn't known. It had been this way for some time, and this only served to embolden the young man's spirit and reinforce his curiosity. His name was Otranto, which I actually made the name of him a sort of shout out to the first ever Gothic novel, which was The Castle of Otranto. So, by Horace Walpole. Yeah, I just decided to give a shout out. It was nearing winter time when Otranto finally decided that something must be done about it. What, however, was a different matter altogether. He decided that he would simply go up to the gate and inquire. It had always astonished him that no one followed this course of action. No one seemed to care that much to him. It is always interesting how little people care when no one else around them cares as well. This seemed to be the state of stagnation that the town had come into at this time. One day, Otranto decided to proceed with his decided course of action. He walked slowly and deliberately along the cobbled road that led to the massive gates ahead, feeling anticipation as well as fear. The walk seemed longer than he had anticipated, and there was a constant urge to turn back, but he knew that he must not, if ever this mystery was to be solved. He could still see the outskirts of the small town from this close to the gates, but there were no people, despite this being around the middle of the day. Otranto continued the long march up to the gates, which dwarfed his figure, wondering if there were eyes upon him from inside the faceless, dusky walls. After what seemed like hours, Otranto finally found himself close enough to touch the heavy wooden gates. 3 times he knocked on the doors, and then he waited. For perhaps a minute, nothing happened. So Otranto knocked louder. Again, there was not even a sound from inside the citadel. He was soon frustrated. Otranto had expected many things to occur, but not this. He pounded louder and louder, until he was beating at the door as hard as he could. Nothing happened. There was nothing he could do then but turn around. He was dumbfounded as to why this fortress, within which so many numerous endeavors were actively being undertaken, could seem so empty. This frustration only seemed to increase the curiosity of the young man, who would now find another way to uncover the secrets held within the fortifications. Others around the town began to keep their distances from him as if they knew of and disapproved of Otranto's intentions. They stood apart from him and became even more aloof than usual. They were only scared of the machine and the unknown, and felt it was a matter to be left alone. They did not have Otranto's courage or curiosity. Soon enough, perhaps within a couple of weeks, Otranto came up with a plan. In the middle of the night, he set out to the docks, quietly and wearing black so that he could not even be seen from a short distance. Snow was falling, and this muffled every sound in the deafening silence. The only sound he could hear was his own footsteps in the snow. It took him about half an hour to get to his destination, where he found a small rowboat that he had left there the previous day. The water was icy and frigid this time of year, even though it would be springtime in just over a month. He sat inside the boat, taking great care to make no sound at all. After he was in the boat, Otranto began to row towards and around the fortress, staying as close as possible to the walls to prevent being seen. Eventually, he made it to the corner of the square citadel and knew there was only half a mile to go. He was heading for the water gate on the opposite side of the large wooden doors he had previously knocked upon. Otranto arrived at the water gate and cringed. He knew what he had to do then. Bracing himself, he jumped into the freezing water. The cold swept over his entire body like 1,000 knives digging into his flesh. It was only a few meters down to where the unforgiving cast iron stopped, and Otranto would be able to slip to the other side. Swimming upwards as quickly as possible, he began to gasp for air, but only receiving the icy salt water. Eventually, he found the surface, which still did not give him as much relief as he would have liked. What Otranto saw confused and amazed him. Every surface inside the fortress was made of flat white marble. The water created sort of a dry dock that could be used to unload materials from the boats that came to the fortress directly from the sea. He could see the smooth granite walls on the other side of the fortress and the gate that he had assaulted weeks before. So here, I had no idea. Like I know what they're building, but
Don't tell us.
Okay, don't tell you? Okay. So I'm sort of I'm trying to capture completely. I came up with a name for it, but Would you like to tell me like, sort of what it does, or what it, just nothing about it? The industry.
Well, what do you think, class? So,
I mean, I like spoilers.
It's not as.
Yeah, I like spoilers.
you want to know what it is? How important it is to the story? Isn't this like the big mystery of the story?
Yeah, it sort of like defines. It's sort of an embodiment of. Effectively, like obviously the thing I've discussed with Otranto is his curiosity and his unwillingness to sort of just say, okay, yeah, whatever.
So
Like
this
the
is
rest
as
of
much as you've written, and you're going to kind of describe.
I know it's to do next, but I'm trying to like make it like capture it in terms of like what I see in my mind, sort of thing.
You know, if this was television, we'd say, okay, stay tuned till next semester or something.
Yeah. This would be working towards building a sort of spire in the middle, like a tall tower made out of like cast iron and all these weird like sort of like brilliant hypnotic sort of thing that they would be all working towards to build. And for me, it was sort of a symbol of temptation of power. Everyone who worked on it blindly followed. They just worked. They didn't say anything. They just worked towards building this thing. They were all sort of, I guess, blindly following. I wrote a little bit. They were all sort of living vicariously through the greatness of an inanimate object. The people that work there are mindless, dedicated to a goal they do not understand. They have become a collective, bound in something that they themselves are only a part of. They are no longer individuals, they are part of the machine. So, I'm sort of trying to call it the spire that devours people. The spire, I thought that had a nice ring to it. I wanted like a whole like personification thing, like devours instead of like consumes. Consumes isn't as like visceral, I don't think. So, thanks. So that's sort of the gist, and effectively, the point is Otranto, when he sees it, he's not as consumed by its power, and it's because he doesn't need that drive to make something, to be a part of something that's greater than himself. He's, I guess that's, because, I also have this cool quote that I'm trying to fit in somewhere. It is our duty to struggle against a meaningless life. In terms of like, everyone who's working for this with their passion and their like complete mindlessness has given themselves a meaningless life. And it's sort of a metaphor for like, in our lives, we don't find meaning within our jobs or our, you know, trying to succeed at whatever we're doing mindlessly rather than like enjoying. We find meaning in enjoying things and finding relationships, building relationships with people, and finding what our passion is rather than working mindlessly to build something that you're only going to be a part of. So
How does your hero find meaning?
Effectively, I sort of
Sorry about that. You liked it better with the lights on.
I sort of said that the meaning came through his action of destroying this spire.
Okay.
Because he was giving the rest of the people meaning through that action.
It's like a positive.
Yeah. I mean, usually they're all like, when springtime comes around, it's a rebirth and all of that. So that's why I said it's a month till springtime. I just added that in.